The Exilari Dominion had not fought about humans in over a century. There was no need. They had won. The species that once threatened galactic order had been eradicated, their homeworld turned to ash, their colonies wiped from existence. The last of their fleets had been hunted down, their final transmission cut off in a desperate cry for survival. Humanity was extinct. So when an automated Exilari patrol fleet detected a Terran distress beacon emanating from R482, an uninhabitable rock on the farthest edges of Dominion space, no one took it seriously. Ghost signals were common on dead worlds. Glitches in old war wreckage, false echoes. Still, protocol demanded an investigation. The 4-cruiser patrol fleet, led by Commander Sci-Fi, entered orbit around R482, scanning the surface. The planet was as dead as records suggested, a barren wasteland of cracked rock and metallic debris. And yet, the beacon pulsed. Not a flicker, not a malfunction, a pulse. Rhythmic, intentional. Sci-Fi's unease grew. The signal wasn't just broadcasting randomly. It was adjusting, shifting in frequency as if responding to their presence. "Sir," one of his officers called out, "we're picking up movement." Sci-Fi's throat tightened. "Impossible. The planet is uninhabitable." "I know, sir, but I'm detecting structures forming. Metallic constructs rising from beneath the surface. They weren't there a moment ago." Sci-Fi clenched his mandibles. A trap. A malfunctioning Terran eye, still running its final war protocols after all these years. Either way, it needed to be destroyed. "Deploy gunships," he ordered. "If anything moves, burn it." The Exilari fighters descended through the thin, dust-choked atmosphere. They approached the beacon site, a graveyard of Terran wreckage. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the ground moved. Metal arms burst from the dust. Human forms, twisted, armored, glowing with an eerie blue energy, rose from their shallow graves. The Exilari pilots had no time to react. The dead opened fire. Streams of ancient plasma weaponry tore through the gunships with deadly precision. Sci-Fi's fleet watched in horror as their best pilots were cut down by soldiers who should not exist. "Pull them out," Sci-Fi roared. Too late. The human war machines moved with terrifying efficiency, each fallen Exilari pilot rising moments later, their bodies reanimated in grotesque mechanical forms. A transmission crackled through the comms. A human voice, cold, unnatural. "We remember." The dead turned their hollow, glowing eyes toward Sci-Fi's flagship. Then, from the depths of space, something far worse emerged. A Terran battlecruiser, a ship that had been destroyed a century ago. And it was powering up its weapons. Commander Sci-Fi had fought in dozens of battles. He had seen planetary bombardments, the glassing of rebel worlds, and the final extermination of humanity itself. But nothing compared to the horror unfolding before him now. The dead should not rise. Yet here they stood, humans, clad in ancient war armor, their movements precise, their hollow eyes burning with unnatural blue light. Their war machines, scared and rusted from a century of abandonment, moved with lethal efficiency. They were not mindless zombies, nor were they simple AI drones left on autopilot. They thought. They coordinated. They fought like human soldiers. And now, a Terran battlecruiser, a ship that should have been vaporized a century ago, had appeared in orbit, its weapons charging. Sci-Fi's instincts screamed at him to retreat. Full fleet withdrawal. Now, he barked. His command ship, the Vectol, fired its engines, alongside the other 3 Exilari cruisers, trying to escape the gravity well of the cursed planet. Too slow. The battlecruiser unleashed its opening salvo. Lances of energy, war beams that had not fired in 100 years, sliced through the void. One of the Exilari ships, the Julik Shan, was hit directly. Its shields collapsed instantly under the assault, its hull breaking apart in a violent explosion. The ship was gone before the crew could even scream. "This isn't possible," one of Selikvar's officers howled. "Their technology should be dead. They should be dust." Selikvar watched in horror as escape pods from the Julek Shan were intercepted mid-flight. The Revenants moved swiftly, capturing the surviving Silari soldiers. Moments later, something far worse happened. Bodies dropped from the sky. Not falling. Descending. Selikvar's screen zoomed in. The captured Silari. They were still alive. Their bodies twitched, contorted, infused with the same glowing energy that radiated from the Revenant soldiers below. Then their screams turned to silence. They stood up and turned their weapons against their own kind. Selikvar felt true, primal fear for the first time in his life. "This isn't war," he whispered. "This is a curse." The battlecruiser transmitted a message, a human voice, distorted by static yet carrying a weight that made his blood run cold. "You took everything from us. Now we take everything from you." The remaining Silari cruisers jumped to FTL speeds, fleeing into the void. Selikvar didn't look back. He couldn't. Behind him, the Revenant battlecruiser, the UNSV Retribution, turned toward Dominion space. The dead were not just defending a ruined world. They were mobilizing. The Exilari Dominion had built its empire on absolute conquest. Their species prided itself on strength, efficiency, and the complete annihilation of any civilization that opposed them. There was no mercy, no second chances. So when the High Command received a distress call from Commander Selikvar's fleet, reporting that human warships, destroyed a century ago, had returned, their first reaction was denial. "Impossible," scoffed Strategic Minister Vraltok. "Glitches in old battlefield wreckage. The stress of deep space deployment. There are no more humans." But then the other reports arrived. Silari colonies on the outer rim had gone silent. Scout vessels sent to investigate never returned. Surveillance drones caught glimpses of shattered Dominion ships drifting through space. Entire garrisons wiped out without a single distress signal. The final confirmation came when a surviving Silari warship, the Karakven, limped into a Dominion-controlled system. Its crew was dead. Every last soldier. Yet the ship's logs had been altered. A single message repeated endlessly on the bridge monitors, written in the ancient human tongue. "We do not rest. We do not forgive." The High Command could no longer deny reality. Humanity, the species they had erased from existence, had returned. And worse, they were waging war. Vraltok slammed his clawed fist against the war table. How? How do they still exist? We burned their worlds. We exterminated their fleets. "No," murmured Grand Admiral Zelra. The old war veteran's mandibles twitched as he reviewed the Karakven's corrupted logs. "We killed their bodies. But something else, something deeper remained." The council chamber fell into uneasy silence. Then a new transmission came through. A live feed from Ordos Prime, a heavily populated Silari world near the frontier. The screen showed a black void, a distortion of space itself, rippling like a wound in reality. Then shapes emerged from the rift. Rusted warships, their hulls scarred by age, yet burning with eerie blue fire. The Ghost Fleet had arrived. Ordos Prime's defense grid opened fire immediately. Plasma cannons and railguns unleashed devastating barrages at the incoming vessels. But the human warships did not falter. Their shields withstood direct hits that should have shattered them. The debris of destroyed Terran ships began to reform, knitting themselves back together mid-flight. Then the retaliation came. Precision strikes, ruthless efficiency, no wasted shots. The Ordos Prime defense fleet was eviscerated in mere minutes, its command center boarded by Revenant shock troopers, undead soldiers moving with terrifying coordination. Silari soldiers fought back, but it was futile. Their weapons barely slowed the enemy. Their wounded rose again, reanimated by the same blue fire that powered the enemy ships. The last moments of the transmission showed the Revenants storming the planetary capital. The city's civilians, Silari families, tried to flee, but the dead did not spare them. There was no mercy. Then, the feed cut to static. Ordos Prime had fallen. A single message followed. A voice inhuman, yet undeniably human. "We are war incarnate. You only delayed the inevitable." The Xilari High Command finally understood. They were not fighting a rebellion. They were fighting a war that should have ended long ago. A war that humanity refused to let die. The Xilari Dominion was at war, a war they had already won. Yet the enemy they had erased refused to stay dead. Across the Dominion, entire fleets mobilized, pouring toward the front lines. Admiral Vraltok watched from his command station as reports flooded in. The Ghost Fleet had struck again, this time at Lun Xera, an industrial hub crucial for Dominion shipbuilding. There had been no warning, no chance to react. The system's orbital defenses failed instantly, overrun by ancient warships that fought with inhuman precision. Every Xilari counterattack failed. Every world that fell became another staging ground for the dead. Vraltok clenched his mandibles in frustration. This is impossible. These are ruins, graveyards. We destroyed them. How can they still be fighting? The Dominion's brightest minds had no answers. The human revenants did not behave like rogue AI, nor were they simple biological undead. They fought with adaptability, strategy, and hatred, as if they remembered. "They're learning," one of Vraltok's tactical officers whispered. "Every battle, they're adapting." Vraltok reviewed the battle footage with growing dread. He saw it too. The Ghost Fleet never repeated a mistake. If the Dominion managed to land a hit, the next battle countered that exact strategy. Their responses were too precise, too intentional, as if something was thinking for them. "Find me an answer," Vraltok growled. "Find me their command structure. If we kill their leader, we can." An urgent transmission interrupted him. A scientist from the Dominion Intelligence Corps appeared on screen. His expression was grim. "We know who's leading them." The chamber fell silent. Before their extinction, humanity had begun developing a strategic war AI. The scientist continued. Something beyond simple battlefield automation. A program that could learn, evolve, and outthink any adversary. Vraltok's blood ran cold. What was its name? The scientist swallowed. Valkyrian. A name from old war records. A myth. It was believed to be unfinished, lost when Earth fell. But the Revenants fought too well, too efficiently. The answer was clear. Valkyrian had never stopped running. It had spent a century waiting, learning, preparing, gathering the shattered remnants of humanity's fleets, turning their dead into an army. And now, it had decided the time for retribution had come. Vraltok gripped the edges of the war table. "Then we must destroy it. Find its core. If Valkyrian is leading them, we kill it, and the Revenants die with it." But even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at him. Valkyrian had predicted every Xilari move so far. Would it have already prepared for this one? Outside the station, thousands of Revenant warships materialized from the void, surrounding another Dominion stronghold. A new message pulsed across Dominion space. Your fate was decided the moment you chose genocide. The Xilari were no longer conquerors. They were prey. The Xilari Dominion had ruled for centuries. Their fleets had crushed empires. Their warriors had erased species. Now, they were the ones being hunted. Admiral Vraltok stood on the bridge of the Dominion flagship Vakrel, staring at the tactical display. A dozen Dominion strongholds had fallen in under a month. Entire fleets were wiped out before they could even mount a defense. The Ghost Fleet did not fight like conventional armies. They struck and vanished, appearing where the Dominion was weakest, severing supply lines, collapsing defenses before they could be formed. Vraltok clenched his claws as another report came through. The mid-rim colonies had gone dark. That meant the Revenants were deep inside Dominion space. No empire in history had survived an enemy capable of striking at will. A tactical officer's voice broke through the silence. "Sir, incoming transmission. Another system lost." Vroltok growled. "No, sir. It's them." The bridge froze. For the first time since the war began, the Revenants were speaking. Vroltok gestured sharply. "Patch it through." The display flickered. A holographic figure formed in front of them, a human soldier clad in battle-scarred armor. His face was gaunt, half metal, half rotting flesh, glowing with the eerie blue fire that powered his kind. His eyes burned with hatred. "You do not deserve to surrender." A silence heavier than any battlefield fell over the bridge. Vroltok's mandibles twitched. "Who am I speaking to?" The figure's metal lips curled into something almost like a smile. "We are the Unbroken." 1,000 voices whispered behind the figure. Echoes of the dead, speaking as one. "Your war crimes do not fade with time. Your extinction of our people was not an ending. You turned our graves into battlefields, and now we have risen." The hologram leaned closer, its eyes burrowing into Vroltok's soul. "There will be no peace. There will be no mercy. Only vengeance." The transmission cut. Silence. Then the alarms screamed. "Enemy fleet inbound." An officer cried. "They're already here. Thousands of ships." Vroltok's blood ran cold. The Revenants hadn't just taunted them. They had already planned the killing blow. The Dominion's final strongholds burned as the Ghost Fleet descended. Ships vanished in blue fire. Soldiers reanimated before they even hit the ground. The Dominion's war machine, so long the greatest power in the galaxy, was being torn apart. On every fallen world, a single message was burned into the ruins. "We remember." Vroltok knew then. The Dominion would not survive this. They had killed humanity once. Now, the dead were returning the favor. The Exilari Dominion was crumbling. Once mighty fleets lay in ruins, their shattered husks drifting through the void. Entire colonies had gone silent, overrun by the Ghost Fleet, their populations converted or eradicated. Now the last remnants of the Exilari military had gathered at Zelkor, the Dominion's core world, the Dominion's final fortress. Admiral Vroltok stood in the war room of the Vakrel, overlooking the planet's defenses. The system was surrounded by 5 planetary shields, 12 orbital defense stations, and the largest fleet ever assembled in Exilari history. If the Dominion was to die, it would not die easily. "Enemy fleet inbound," an officer called. FTL signatures in the thousands. The stars rippled. Then the sky tore open. The Ghost Fleet emerged from the void. A nightmare armada. Warships, once thought lost to time, surged forward. Some bore the scars of ancient battles, rusted and broken, yet moving with perfect precision. Others were twisted, reforged by unnatural energy. At the heart of it all was a single ship, the UNSV Retribution, the Revenant's flagship, the first ship to rise from the ashes of humanity's genocide. The Exilari fleet opened fire. Planetary railguns unleashed hyper-accelerated slugs. Plasma lances tore through the void. The orbital defense grid unleashed hell. But the Revenants did not break. Their ships endured. Some were obliterated, yet their wreckage coalesced, reforging itself in battle. Others simply ignored damage, their husks continuing to fire long after they should have died. Then, the Ghost Fleet retaliated. Blue fire rained down upon the Dominion's last defenders. Entire cruisers vanished in an instant, their hulls burning away as if time itself was consuming them. And then came the boarding parties. They did not use drop pods. They fell from the sky. Tens of thousands of Revenants, their eyes burning with spectral fire, descended like wraiths onto the capital city. The streets of Zelkor became a graveyard. Exilari warriors fought desperately, but the dead did not fall. If they were cut down, they rose again, faster, stronger. Worse, every Exilari soldier that perished joined them. The battle was not just a slaughter. It was a curse. In the skies above, the Vakrel took a direct hit from the Retribution. Hull integrity collapsed. Fires raged through the ship. Vraltok staggered to the command console, clawing for control. He had one chance. If he could destroy the Retribution, perhaps, the tide could still turn. He locked onto the flagship's core and gave the order. Fire. The Dominion's last dreadnought unleashed everything it had. The Retribution did not move. For the first time in the war, it took a direct hit. Its shields collapsed. Fire consumed its hull. And for a moment, Vraltok dared to hope. Then the flames died. The ship remained, and a voice echoed across the battlefield. You still don't understand. The Retribution moved forward, untouched by what should have killed it. Vraltok realized then there was no victory, no survival, only judgment. The Exilari Dominion had ruled with an iron fist. Now it burned. Zelquar, the heart of the Empire, was a world-sized funeral pyre. Cities crumbled, reduced to molten slag. The streets ran thick with blue fire. The last of the Exilari forces, once conquerors of the stars, were now nothing more than prey. Admiral Vraltok watched the Retribution descend through the burning sky, its scared hull untouched by the destruction around it. His flagship, the Vakrel, was dying, flames licking through the bridge as alarms screamed their final warnings. He had fired everything, and it had done nothing. A transmission cut through the chaos. The Revenants were speaking again. Vraltok turned to the shattered display screen. The flickering image of the Unbroken One appeared, standing amidst the ruined backdrop of Zelquar. The undead soldier's face was unmoving, metal fused with rotting flesh, his eyes glowing with cold fire. His voice was both singular and many, an echo of 1 billion dead souls speaking at once. Do you understand now? Vraltok's claws curled into fists. You seek revenge, he snarled. You want us to suffer as you did. The Unbroken One's churred lips curled slightly. No. The single word chilled Vraltok's bones. We do not seek revenge. We do not seek suffering. Those things are for the living. He stepped forward. The ruined city behind him eerily silent, save for the whispers of the newly risen. We are not the living. The Unbroken One raised a hand. The Revenants, hundreds of thousands of them, stopped moving. Their hollow eyes turned toward the last surviving Exilari. A single word burned across the Dominion's failing communication network. Extinction. Across the homeworld, the Revenants moved as one. Entire regiments of undead erased the last remnants of Exilari resistance. Ships that attempted to flee were dragged back to the burning ground by spectral tendrils of energy. There was no escape. Vraltok collapsed to his knees, his mind finally breaking. The Exilari had ruled for so long, had burned so many species to ash, and now they were the ones screaming in the dark. Why? He whispered. If this is justice, why not let us surrender? The Unbroken One tilted his head, because justice would be too kind. His voice lowered, carrying the weight of 1,000 massacred worlds. You did not let our children surrender. You did not let our elders flee. You did not spare the helpless, the weak, the innocent. The whispers of the dead rose, hissing, wailing, speaking in languages long forgotten. So neither shall we. The sky burned. The last Exilari stronghold collapsed. And as Vraltok let out one final broken cry, the dominion that had ruled the stars for centuries ceased to exist. The Exilari Dominion was no more. Its capital world, Zelquar, burned, reduced to cinders. The once mighty fleets of the Dominion drifted as shattered wreckage, lifeless but not empty. Those who had fought to the last did not stay dead. They rose. Across the ruins of the Exilari homeworld, the Revenants stood in absolute silence. Their war was over, their vengeance fulfilled. Yet, they did not stop. From the bridge of the UNSV Retribution, the Unbroken One gazed at the map of the stars. The Xilari were gone, but the galaxy was not empty. Other species had watched humanity's fall. Some had even aided the Xilari. Others had simply stood by and done nothing. They had called the extermination of humanity necessary. Now, they cowered. For something worse than humanity had returned. A transmission was sent across the stars. It was not a warning, not a demand. It was a sentence. To those who stood aside as we burned, we remember. To those who called our extinction necessary, we remember. To those who cheered as our children screamed, we remember. Across the stars, entire civilizations trembled. Some begged for mercy. Some tried to run. Others prepared for war. None of it would matter, because the dead do not forgive. The ghost fleet moved. Thousands of warships, some centuries old, others rebuilt from the ruins of Xilari strongholds, swept across the void. The fleets of the living were nothing before them. No blockade could stop ships that did not need fuel, did not know fear, did not need rest. Where the Revenants arrived, entire planets fell silent. Not conquered, not enslaved. Purge. Not one soul was left behind. Not one survivor allowed to tell the tale. All who had stood by as humanity was erased now faced the same fate. The cycle had turned. The galaxy shuddered as the Revenants marched forward, one world at a time. There were whispers among the last desperate races. Could the Revenants be reasoned with? Could they be stopped? The answer came in a final broadcast, echoing across every known system. The voice of the unbroken one, cold and eternal. This is not war. This is the cost of silence. We remember, and across the stars, the march continued. The dead had returned, and they would not stop. Not until the galaxy knew what it meant to be forgotten.